Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another stupendous edition of the best darn show on the internet, the Sharon Show. We have a guest today. It feels like this has been a very long time coming. So I'm
Yes.
really excited about our guest today. But before we do that, I'm going to bring up the quotes. And we have two quotes today. And then we're going to say hi to everybody. Okay, so both quotes are by Hippocrates, if you must. First one is the natural healing force within each one of us is the greatest force in getting well.
Mm-hmm.
Here, here.
Here, here.
All right. And then the next one.
That's very British. Here, here.
Here, here. Illnesses do not come upon us out of the blue. They are developed from small daily sins against nature. When enough sins have accumulated, illnesses will suddenly appear. Wow, that sounds like a conspiracy theory to me. I love it. Those Greeks, boy, I tell you, they knew a thing or two. What's up, Sharon? How are you today?
I'm great. I pulled a card from the Tarot of the Divine. And unless you guys want to chit chat about the quotes, I
Yeah,
can
we could always do that. Let me bring us back. I have it on you, but I think that's a great idea. Today's guest
yes, let's do that.
really needs no introduction unless you only watch the show. But if you're a part of our circle of friends, then you know our guest, and she is Spoons. Welcome, Spoons. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like you've been a very integral part of the show behind the scenes for sure. We knew you before we even started the show. We're all friends, and you were also part of our awesome Sedona meetup in 2022. And I got to drive halfway across the country with you and some other great people. So it was a lot of fun. We had some fun adventures. And then we met up with Sharon. And I know we talked about that a bunch, but I just want to thank you for coming on and welcome to the Sharon Show. Finally.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks for being patient.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
No worries. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So these
Awesome.
quotes were your idea, and you have a background in, we'll say, healthcare, and you could share as much as you want about that. So I'm guessing that's what led you to these quotes because of your worldview, because of your background and stuff. But if you want to say a little something about them or whatever.
Yeah, and we didn't say, but she selected the quotes. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I just kind of felt like they were kind of part of my journey because you guys wanted to sort of talk about a spiritual journey. And so, this is kind of like going back to the medical mindset for me and seeing how it evolves over time. And I just really liked these quotes because they kind of break it down. They're like it's the journey from within and the process of finding what works for you along the way. So finding what is and isn't your medicine. So I love that.
yeah, and you can tell us a little bit more about the what is and what isn't your medicine as we talk about your spiritual journey. But I'll just pull this card right now, and then if we want, we can talk more about the quotes. So I pulled the Fool card, which is
Whoa.
very apropos, I would say,
Yeah.
because we are talking about a spiritual journey and it
Mhm.
starts somewhere, right?
Yes.
It starts with being foolish. But hey, I've also heard that fool also was supposed to be soul. So, and we are souls that begin our journeys upon entrance to the realm. Um, at least we begin one journey if we reincarnate. We we're on several journeys at this point. But I will read from the book, and this is actually The Little Mermaid. It's a Danish fairy tale. So this is from Denmark. It
Oh.
says, the fool rests on the pinnacle of decision. She is ready to dive out of her subconscious and into the physical world, to transform from an animal into a human. She is carefree and excited by a new life, regardless of warnings. Upright meaning is beginnings, possibilities, impulsiveness, innocence, and a free spirit. And the reversed meanings are apathy, hesitation, a faulty choice, doldrums, and recklessness.
I love that.
There we have it.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense for that card to be the card to come up, talking about meaning in 2021 and our journey in 2022. It's kind of like that new adventure and the characters that present themselves along the way. It's just always so fun.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say 2020, we met in 2021, and then in person we met in 2022, right? And it's crazy because I always feel like I met you guys sooner than that. Like I'm like, didn't we meet in 2020? No, we didn't meet in 2020. Not yet. We hadn't met yet. It was the
Doesn't
year
it feel like
after
so
the
long?
Nazis. It feels weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I say to myself, like, how did I get through 2020 without these people that I'm friends with now? Like, how did I make it through? And I go back and watch some of my videos from then. And, I think I was way more in a little bit of a fear spiral than I am now. So thank you guys so much. But yeah, it's so funny because it does feel like we've known each other longer. We're like, how did we? But we all had similar journeys, which is amazing also. So I think that's
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think Brandon started his journey into like these esoteric topics that we talk about, and these I guess what you would say like spiritual journeys sooner than we did. But I think coming together in 2021, we kind of like, I feel like I exponentially grew. Like I feel like it was like parabola. It was like, you know.
Well,
Woo.
the thing too about you, Sharon, is that you have studied the Bible and Christianity your whole life, and we've talked about how it didn't mean, and you had all these questions, and there wasn't meaning. But I feel like what you came across in 2021 or 2022, or whatever, gave that meaning. So that's why you were so supercharged because you already knew
Yeah.
all these things. That's why every time we talk, you're constantly quoting Bible verses, which is amazing because the meaning that you're putting behind them, you're looking at it from a much more open mind than just a Christian point of view. But I feel like that had a lot to do with it as well. Because
Oh yeah.
when I came into my journey too, once that stuff started to make sense to me, I'm like, oh yeah, all these parables I've always memorized and stuff, and bringing it back to the Fool, it's perfect because the Fool really, some people think that it represents the entire journey through the cards, through all the major arcana. So the Fool is somebody that can relate to each card. It's kind of like a mirror to you when you're on that journey. So you'll take the Magician and the Fool and you look at how they can both relate to you. And then when you move along your journey to the High Priestess, it's the same thing. You have the Fool next to it, and it's kind of like a mirror to see what's going on. And it's crazy that we're talking about spiritual journeys today and the Fool comes up because like you guys said, I think that is really the number one card when it comes to esoteric knowledge about knowing yourself, really is the Fool, because we all start off that way, and we will all, I don't want to say end that way because I feel like the spiritual journey really doesn't have an end, but I feel once you get to a certain point in your journey, you realize that you don't know anything again. And you just, I was having a conversation with somebody. Normally, I always try to interject my points, and I'm just like, you know what? You're right. I'm like, you're right. It's like the way you're seeing it, you're nailing it perfectly. Why am I going to try to get my point in here or whatever? But enough about me. I just think it's great that we pull the Fool.
Yeah, I think
Well,
so
it's
too.
that willingness to be able to take that step out there and try something new. That's really all that I feel like the Fool is about. It's willing to take the adventure and journey and come what may, look foolish or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, just we Elizabeth and I went to this restaurant and they had a Zoltar machine from like the
That's
movie
funny.
Big. And I should have, you know what, maybe I'll even run down or have her bring it up. But this fortune I got was like really, of course, just like deep. The normal fortunes are pretty deep, but this one was like, what? And one of them it said that it's better sometimes in situations, it's better to keep your mouth shut and look like a fool than to open it and prove it, you know. So I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I I can I can resonate with that one.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because if people aren't in the same kind of space as you are, anything you say is going to sound crazy.
Yeah.
So it's like what was your point? You're trying to sound special, you're trying to sound like you know more, you're better because it's like, you know what? I should have just shut my trap, kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, that was my thing for sure. Because when I came across all this knowledge, I'm like, ooh, look at all this knowledge that I have. So I would always want to like interject and share it. And now I'm just like, yeah, man, you're great. Like you're so right.
Yeah.
The moon is made out of cheese, man. I can't wait till I get up there and I'm bringing some crackers. It's gonna be great. Like,
Wallace and Gromit.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, the full card I think is about humility, and um that's kind of like a sink, I think, right now for me is just returning to that space of humility of like, I don't really know. And it's okay. You know, that's that can be tough. And some people take a long time to get there. And, you know, I've taken a long time to get there from, when I was young. But yes, we're here and we're wait, where did Spoons go? Oh, I
she
think
dropped out. Well,
shoot,
that's
her
all right. I'll
energy.
take this second to say, hey, everybody, do I sound better today? I finally hooked my microphone up and I'm so excited. I
Oh,
just
what
been,
do you mean? What happened?
well, no, I have the microphone that I had originally well, I don't want to move it now, but
It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Don't.
yeah, it's, kind of like your mic, right? It's like one of
Okay.
these, like a regular mic instead of the clip on that I was using,
Oh,
which
okay.
sounded pretty good. Or I was also using the stock mic with this laptop, which is pretty good too. But when I hear myself against Sharon, and Sharon has this crispness with her, I'm like, oh man, I gotta get my mic hooked up. So you're welcome, everybody.
Oh, so yours wasn't sounding as crisp. I guess I didn't notice.
Yeah, I don't know. To my ear,
It's
it wasn't
okay.
maybe,
I
but
mean, I
just
guess you're probably an audiophile.
exactly. Spoons is back. But I was just talking about how I finally hooked up my old mic and it's going to sound better. I always have something to talk about when something happens, either a commercial or yeah, I'm ready to
Yeah.
go. That's
Shout
the
out
thing
to the
about
chat or whatever.
yeah. That by the way, shout out to the chat. Thank you guys for hanging out with us while we premiere this video. I'm so excited that you guys are all here and thanks for coming. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Roll.
So without further ado, I want to hear about a little bit about Spoon's kind of growing up, whatever she feels comfortable sharing. And I guess, whatever point you want to stop, that's cool. But like maybe some like salient features along the way of like maybe awarenesses that you had or kind of hints or maybe just even things that were just maybe just difficulties that made you who you are and brought you to where you're at.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard sometimes to figure out where is the good starting point for these
Yeah.
kind of talks. But I guess I could say my parents were raised Christian.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was small, they didn't go to church until I probably was around 10 or so. And then we started going to a Baptist church. So I feel like I was raised with that kind of religion for the most
Mm-hmm.
part. And, I think that's a good way to be raised. It gives you a set of rules and all of that sort of thing.
Morals and
Mm-hmm. I probably more enjoyed the music than any part of the church
Yeah.
really.
Because you're musically inclined, right?
Yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed singing and choir, and when I think about things that I miss about being in a church, the music is typically what I'm really
Yeah.
missing. That
Yeah.
some of that community, and then yeah,
I
but
can
music,
resonate with that too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Should make our own choir, the Over Sharon choir. We have enough people. I mean, it's like,
That's funny.
Absolutely.
that would be
It could be a
great.
fun project. But yeah, so I grew up like that, and grew up out in the country. So, very slow paced life. It's kind of hard to even describe it because it's not so much that way in that area now. But, I lived about 10 minutes from any sort of gas stations or grocery stores.
Mhm.
Everything was pretty far out from us. Um, but it was a great way to grow up. Um, what else? Eventually, let's see, I worked for a cell phone company for a while in my young age and kind of grew with that technology. We still have pagers and all of those sorts of.
I think she's cutting
We were just
off.
talking about pagers recently.
That's funny.
And you know what else is funny? Wanted to make a note to talk to her about something as she was beginning, and
Yeah.
I typed parents myself,
And
and
she
then she
started.
opened up with parents. It was so
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. We should ask her about her sister too.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I it's funny how so many people's spiritual journey um is similar in the way, especially in the Christian, I guess it's in the West here because Christianity is so popular, but it's funny how I hate to say it like but institutions will teach this stuff. This it's like enough spirituality. It's like the baseline main. It's just enough to get people through and to get people by and to keep them going so they don't go crazy. It reminds me of like battlefield medicine, like when you're on the battlefield and they're just like patching you up to get back at
Mm,
fighting or whatever.
yeah.
And it's all this stuff is there, but you just don't have the keys, like I was saying before. So you learn all these things, but you just don't even realize what you're learning. And then you're filled with all this, like these beautiful sayings and esoteric knowledge and wisdom, and then on the other hand you're just told that you just gotta praise God and praise Jesus and everything will be all right. It's so
Mm-hmm.
crazy. She's back. It's funny,
Yeah.
Spoons, because I was saying before you got started, when Sharon was asking me that, I wrote a note to bring up so I didn't forget, and the one word I put was parents, and then you opened up by talking about your parents. What a crazy synchronous. Like I
Yeah.
was like, I just
And I had thought in my head, she's like, I don't really know where to start. I thought like how she grew up with like religion. And that's the first thing she mentioned too. So I think we're
Yeah,
all in sync right now.
yeah.
But
It's
the last thing you said before it cut off was that you were working for a cell phone company. But I also wanted to say that you could, whenever you want, you could bring up like growing up with a sibling or, like you can talk about that too if you want.
Yeah. So yeah, I worked for, cell phone company growing, kind of my first real job, really, I guess, that I stayed at for a while and grew with that kind of technology, and then decided I wanted to go into more of a service role and work with people, and went into nursing from that. So, it was one of those interesting things. This lady we worked with had a premature baby, and we kept going to the hospital to visit and take her things or whatever. And that just kind of got to my heart, and I said, "Oh, I think I want to do something in this realm." And of course, I never worked with the neonatal. I realized how complicated and complex that was. So I picked some other areas to work in, but it's interesting how when you look back, you see how you're led to do certain things, and they help you grow and develop over time. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to skip like way for it. I'll go back and forth, but just thinking about 2021 though, where I kind of was ending my nursing journey, uh, was where I met up with you guys. And I don't know, I think about 2020, 2021, and how those kind of things came together, and you meet certain people and get to have different conversations and have those perspective shifts, and how you're able to see, well, okay, some people would say that's the start of your spiritual journey, but as you start looking back, it's been there all along. You're always on that journey. We just are able to see it more at certain points in our life.
Yeah,
So,
like you're awakened to it pretty much,
yeah.
to the knowledge of I am on the journey now. Like
Yeah.
I always was, but now I know that I am. And I'm
Yeah.
aware.
And I don't know. I think it was interesting because
I think she might be cutting off.
And what also is interesting, I think, about spirituality is that everybody has a different definition when they say, because I remember even before I was into this stuff, people would say that they're spiritual or they're working
Yeah,
on spirituality, and I didn't understand what it meant. And then
me either.
when I say to some people, I'm sure they have a different definition of it too. It's the way these crazy words work in our realm.
Yeah. I don't like to use it because I remember
Yeah.
and I'm just noticing that right now. I'm like I don't use that word because I remember being confused by it or throwing people off. I felt like I was thrown off by when somebody would say, "Well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual." And I'm like, "Is that a cop out?" Like back then, right? I'm like, "What does that mean?" Right. So now I, I mean, I don't, if I ever talk about it, I mostly just say I don't put a label on how I view the world. Um, I take a lot of spiritual concepts and I find the commonalities in all the different spiritual um beliefs and things like that. Uh, just a little story the other day. I was at my sister's house and I was reading a book on my iPad, and my nephew was sitting next to me playing video game on the couch, and he's like, "What are you reading?" And he's like 10, almost 11. And I said, "Oh, it's a book about the world's religions," because that's what I was reading at that moment. And he's like, "Oh, I have a book kind of like that." He's like, "But it's for like, it's for kids." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." And he's like, "I'll bring it." And so he brought it, and it was cool because each page had like a different like religion. But what the funny part was, which I thought was funny, was that like there was of course like Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and all these, right? But then there was like even like the Christian sects, like you know uh Baptist and Seventh Day Adventist and all these like different sects of like the Amish were in there, like all those like different Christian type sects. And I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, when I looked at the picture of his book and I looked at the picture front cover of my book, it was neat because the picture was like multiple people from different backgrounds, like wearing their traditional garb, their gear and whatnot. And I was like, look at the similarities. How interesting. Isn't that cool? But anyway,
that's awesome.
That's a cool synchronicity.
yeah. So anyway, spoons. Where were we?
I'm
Oh,
not sure.
you were talking about, I think in 2021, you were ending the nursing path of your life.
Right. Yeah, just kind of coming to that point where I needed to let go of that particular thing, because it was causing me more frustration than it was helping me. And it doesn't mean that I couldn't use that knowledge still or anything like that. It just meant it just caused more frustration than it needed to. And so I needed to figure out how to unwrap myself from that title. And you don't realize sometimes how much you have let yourself become wrapped up into something until you try to unwind it. And then I would have never thought here I am, 3 or 4 years later, and I'm still kind of unwinding pieces of that. But I think now I'm kind of in this process of how do I take this knowledge that I have and these things that I can do and still serve people with that. One of the things I guess I'm kind of currently considering, and I've done some of it for friends, like even for Brandon, he had a bite or a burn or something a couple of years ago, and we talked through the process because I know he doesn't want to do medications, he doesn't want to do this, that, and the other thing. So it's kind of like having conversations with people, knowing what their goals are, and then offering them advice on things they could consider. Let them make the decision. I'm not responsible for that particular aspect of it, but just kind of helping with the knowledge that I have.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't know if it was a bug bite on my leg or
That's
something.
right. I forgot about
And it got
that.
really bad. It looked like it might have even been like staph infection or something. But
what is those spider bites, like brown recluse or whatever?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that allegedly they totally, ew, it looks gross.
Yeah.
Was it like that?
It was kind of like that. Yeah. I think what had happened was I had something like a bug bite or something on my leg, and my pants that day, what I was wearing was really irritating, like when I was walking around. And then from there, it just like started going downhill. So we talked about a few things. I can't even remember what I did. I do remember I used a bunch of raw honey on it though,
I think I remember that too.
which really helped. I can't remember, but I see what she's saying. And I think that is a great way to do it because we both know Spoons, and Spoons' worldview is like she's not going to just do one or the other. And was my experience. Oh, yeah, no
I'm
worries.
not sure.
I was just talking about that that thing that I had on my leg and how we came over and how your point of view with things is like you're not totally one way or another. You're very open to what works for people. And I think that's important if you're going to be in the realm of helping people heal themselves, because you have to deal with everybody else's worldview, right? Like if you go to the hospital, they have one worldview and they expect you to ascribe to that worldview. And most people do. So that's why I think it works for them. But if you're somebody that doesn't hold that worldview and you're not really sure, because there's just so much information out there. We went through 2020, as we talked about, and I think a lot of us learned things like, oh, did you know germ theory was just a theory and there is really no proof and all these things, right? But there's another aspect of it. Like there's truth there because it's still somehow people get sick, so we're not exactly sure. In the way that I think Sharon and I, from talking to Sharon so much, we believe is really, I think it's just based on how the people's belief system, maybe it isn't just one way how people exactly get ill or sick. But I think the quotes in the beginning have a little bit of a hint toward what it could be. But to bring it back to Spoons, and I think it would be good for you to do that, Spoons, because like I was saying, you're very open to all different ways. And the way it worked with me is you kind of, it was just like I had another person there to make sure that has a medical background to know that, hey, look, this doesn't look that bad. It's pretty bad, but it's getting better, stuff like that. Because I wouldn't want to, with an injury or illness or whatever, like certain ones you don't know. I mean, it could get to the point where it's life threatening or whatever, and you're not sure what to do. Yeah. And I think that would lead you to freak out even more, which would be worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, going to the doctor is fine. It's great. And it's what most people do, but people don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't know how to ask questions. They just want to go in there and kind of be told because they feel like that's the person that knows. And that's
Mhm.
not to say that the doctors don't know, but are their goals the same goals as yours?
And do they
That's
know your body like you know your body?
right. Right. And I mean, sometimes they do. I think a big part of helping people with health is knowing what are the right questions to ask. And some people are good at that and some people are not.
Yeah,
So,
and like you said, they haven't, I don't know if you said this, but it's like they haven't really been taught to ask those kinds of questions or to be very much a part of their own, health journey. They
right.
just, like you said, it's just a thing, a prescription, do this, do that, do as you're told type of thing instead of saying, wait, well, why? You know?
Yeah.
And I definitely started asking those whys like in my early 20s. I was like, but why? Like,
Hmm.
why am I getting acne on my face? Like, what am I eating? And they're like, oh, no, it's not about food. I'm like, why wouldn't it be? Like, why wouldn't it be
Exactly.
about food?
Yeah, it has a lot of similarities to me in my worldview. YouTube. This is just the way I feel. It reminds me a little bit of a cult because the doctors in the white lab coats are the ones that are put on the pedestal. And I know from my own experience when I used to go to doctors more and I'd be like, oh, they're going to have the answers. Whatever's wrong with me, I'm just going to ask them and they're going to exactly know and I'm not going
Yeah.
to have to worry about it. And it reminds me of just like normal religion. You go to church and they're going to tell you what to believe and what's good for you. And that works for some people, but other people have questions and have, want to do it their own way and they might know their body better. So it's the same thing with cosmology or religion, the medical thing. It's like you have a right hand path and a left hand path, and some people choose to go in the middle way because uh, you can't. So many people try to get on a show, on a podcast or whatever, and try to tell you the way that it is and the best way forward for everybody. And I
Right.
just don't think that's the case, right? It's all about
It's
individuality.
unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is no answer for every single person. Like it's unique.
Right.
And then people feel
Yeah.
bad because they go to a normal doctor when they have some of this knowledge. And I think it makes it even worse. You know, the key to all this spirituality, whatever it is just to be easy on yourself. You're doing your best. You're doing a great job, listener, over Sharonite person who's listening to this. Keep doing it. You're killing it right now.
Absolutely. I think people, we just need to listen to the inner voice more. And maybe we don't necessarily even have to follow it. Sometimes it's just about asking the question.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just leading you to ask the question because I feel like everything comes to you as you need it. Like I think was it in 2022 our friend Adam was really big about the dandelion stuff.
Hmm.
And you get to looking and it's like nature's constantly bringing things to you that you need. And when you look at what all the things that the dandelion can help you with and how they are just constantly, people are weeding them out of their yard. And it's like nature's bringing it to your doorstep and saying, here's the help for you. And we're like, no, this is a weed. Just toss it aside. It's not the answer for that person, I suppose, and that's fine. But
Hmm.
it's interesting when you start looking at things with a different perspective. But yeah, I don't think you have to choose the natural way or the medical way. I think you can blend these things together and just
And
make the
what
correct
works for you?
choices. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when you're going along a path and you're trying to be a purist about anything, you're just making it your identity. So it's the same thing with spirituality or with religion or with, sports teams or whatever the heck it is. Or, I like the Crowley Tarot. No, I like the Rider Waite or whatever. It's just becoming a part of your identity. And if you realize that you're kind of doing it backwards, if you're following your intuition, You don't need to, it reminds me a lot of somebody who is on the edge and they're kind of like if they're super religious, but they're starting to lose a little bit of their faith, but they start to double down, right? And some people, and they start to get even more crazy with their religion and they'll try to have fights with people and prove stuff to them. It's that same kind of thing. I think I just lost my train of
I
thought.
doubled down. I know that.
I mean,
Yeah,
we've all done it in
yeah,
some respect, you know. We
exactly. And
think
there's
we
nothing wrong
know.
with it, of course. But yeah, go ahead.
It's part of your journey,
Yeah, yeah.
And but I don't or Spoons, you look a little frozen, so I'm not sure. I think you're frozen again.
Oh yeah,
But
she looks like she's pondering what we just said.
yeah. But
Oh, I was just talking about pedestal. I think maybe I'll finish that a little bit. Like it's funny how it is really all the same though. It's about you have this ego, and again, there's really nothing wrong with the ego. We say this all the time. We don't think you should destroy the ego. Just realize what it is. And I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, I guess. Just do it, baby. Just do the work, everybody.
yeah, did you I think in the oversharing chat, Joe posted a he shared it with me and Spoons, but um it was like I think it was like a 6 minute video. But what did you just say? Now I lost my train of thought.
Oh, I was basically talking about how this stuff with the medical industry is the same with religion, really. You have like the right hand path and the left hand path. And in sports teams or whatever, people want to identify. And that's what I was saying with the natural thing. You come across some new knowledge, and that's why knowledge can be dangerous because you come across this, like I know I did in 2020, and I did like a full 180, and I was just arguing with everybody and stuff. And not to say that that's wrong. I'm glad that I did all that stuff. It was really eye opening. But now I realize that it doesn't, even when it comes to eating, like I would try to only eat the best, grass fed, organic, all this stuff. And oh, she's back. And what I realized is that it could be another trap because say I'm somewhere where I don't get to eat organic, or say I've been eating something and then I find out it's really not organic. What am I going to spiral about it? And this is what we're talking about, Spoons,
Yeah.
about being purity. I was bringing the conversation back about purist and being trying to be pure with everything. And even like with eating and stuff, we all try to eat the best and not try to eat any of the garbage. But I think the best way to do it is to say that, I'm a being of light. What I'm eating here is just technically light anyway. It really can't harm me. I'm not going to worry about it. And as you eat it, even if there are toxins in there and they affect you, I think they're going to have a lot less of an effect if you look at it that way. And who knows, maybe your body will process it better because you believe it's going to process it better. Because
Yeah.
I think if you believe it's going to harm you, then your body's like, okay, I guess it's going to harm us, like,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a conversation on the way up here to where I drove up to Knoxville today for a ride share. And it was kind of interesting because we were having the discussion about health. And I said, I feel like stress and just the modern conveniences we have probably influenced our health in ways that we don't even understand. And if you could control your stress levels and make sure you get appropriate amounts of rest, that probably cures like tons of diseases. Those two small steps.
Yeah, the stress thing is really
Huge.
huge. I don't think people realize because people will go on a flight, they'll take a flight or they'll go on a trip for like a week or whatever, and they don't realize that they're overdoing it all the time. They're overdoing it. They're staying up later than they normally would. They're running around, and then they fly back, and like, flying is just a nightmare, especially these days, apparently, for what's going on. So you get home and then you get sick, and then you're like, oh, I must have caught something on the plane. Maybe, or maybe your body, maybe it's a combination of both. I don't know. Or maybe your body's just run down and your normal belief system tells you, oh, planes are places where you catch illnesses and you get sick. So you're already in that frame of mind. You're trying not to be close to people and breathe stuff in. And then you get home and you have this event where your body just needs a break, and then you're like, oh, I got sick. So it's like the way things are framed. That's what I'm really starting to see. It's all about framing and points of view and like spinning things, just like politics. It's the same thing. You know, you look all day like right versus left. You know, when an event happens, like somebody gets shot in the ear or whatever, you could go to like certain channels and you could see how they're saying, oh, this is what happened. Oh, this is what happened. And it's just these different reality tunnels right next to each other. And they're transparent. So you could see over there, you could see the person, right? But it's the same thing with the medical industry or any of this stuff, spirituality, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was being reminded of that video that Joe sent us um, by David R. Hawkins. It was just actually it wasn't even that long. It was probably a couple minutes long. And it was called Let Go, Resisting the Animal Reactions. And it was so comforting because it was talking about how you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be so pure and so like positive all the time. Like I never say bad words and I never, react negatively. And he's like, if you drop a block on your foot, you're not going to be like, oh, this feels wonderful. I'm so glad I'm not a being, like I'm a being of light. You're going to say, oh, damn. He's like, you're going to say that.
At best.
And it's okay. It's the point
Yeah.
is, it's not your go-to, but when something like that happens, that your animal instinct reacts. And I mean, that's you. That's normal. You're a human being here in this realm. So that's going to happen. And you shouldn't be like getting upset at yourself for reacting that way. It's not your normal. It's not like you're constantly angry, right? That was his point.
And yeah, that's something Michelle really stressed to me. Michelle Albers, shout out to her. I'm sure she's watching this. Hi, Michelle. How you doing? And she was telling me this. She gave me a reading a few years ago, and she was saying how you have to be easy on yourself. And I've basically just become like a evangelist for that message because I see it in people all the time and in myself. And it really is, it seems to me, maybe just at this point, is to be easy on myself because we're taught, we have this puritanical system that, the Puritans are the ones
Puritanical.
It's not like botanical, it's a little different, but the Pilgrims came over here and they had a bunch of turkey and corn, and it was all about working and work will set you free. And if you don't work, guess what? You're a piece of shit. Like that's really the message. And it's been pushed down. And I'm not saying it's a bad message. Like, yeah, you probably should not just sit around and do nothing all day. Like you should work. But I feel like people's validation and their existence for living, especially in the Northeast here and on the East Coast, is really all about working. And if you feel like you're not working or doing something right or contributing positively to the people around you, you start to feel like a real piece of crap. And it's just the way people want to talk about there's this giant system of control and the Illuminati, and the Rothbergs. You gotta watch out for the Rothbergs.
That's the best. That is the best.
I'm accidentally funny. Guys, these Rothbergs. But really, it's just the little voices in our heads. And this is something I talk about all the time, but everyone's little voice, and that's like the collective unconscious, right? Speaking to us. And I think that's what happens. Some of us get unplugged from this. That's a side story. And then we end up like on spiritual journeys and stuff. But we still take with us, though, that terrible master, that little voice in the back of our head that's like, oh, you're a fucking. And I've been doing some battling with it recently. But I'm trying to, and this is something I talked about on the show recently too, but I'm trying to not be so adversarial with this little voice in my head. But anyway, that's either here nor there. It really is about, I think, though, just being easier on yourself. That's like half the battle. It really is, because you're going to make mistakes. And when you get on the spiritual path, you automatically are like, all right, I'm going to be pure. I'm going to quit doing all this stuff. I'm going to be perfect. And then when you're not, you get mad at yourself and it just starts to spiral again. So I feel like it's like, I'm going to do my best today. And it's reading the Tao and doing that series on the Tao, I think has really helped because it's just like, it just repeats it and ingrains it over and over into that. It's like, do your work and then forget about it. It's like, do your best. And then
Mm-hmm.
next time, try to do your best again. Learn from the past. Don't,
Don't be attached to the end,
yeah, don't be attached to
whatever goal
the
or whatever,
results.
like the result end result. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, back to spoons. I don't know if you had anything to say about that, but I know you worked I think you worked in the emergency department, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I worked in the ER in the small town for 3 years, I think it was. And then I moved to the city and worked in a cardiac cath lab, which is people having heart attacks. So you go in and take out their little blood clot blockage and open up that blood vessel. And, basically we're plumbers, high dollar plumbers. And, well,
nice.
not really high dollar plumbers, but, it was a really interesting job. But I kept picking all these jobs and they were really requiring a ton of adrenaline.
Mm.
So, that's that whole recognizing that you're an adrenaline junkie, that you
Mm-hmm.
just keep kind of doing these things. And I mean, it's great. And there's people that can probably do those jobs and not get caught up in that chemical. I don't know. Or maybe they have better mechanisms, coping mechanisms to deal with it. I didn't. It got to a point where it just kind of spit me out, chewed me up and spit me out. And, you know, it's hard because it's not necessarily that I wanted to quit. I had to quit because I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I had no kind of schedule anymore. I was killing myself quite literally, trying to save other people. And this kind of goes back into
Avoiding
that.
saving yourself.
Exactly. Goes right back into that spiritual journey where you start realizing, oh, you got to take care of you so you can take care of other people. It's not to say
Exactly.
that you can't take care of other people and help people, but you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself.
First.
So,
Service to others is service to self, and service to
Absolutely.
self is service to others. It's like backwards. It's so crazy because when you're trying to people please and only serve others, you're not being honest with them.
And
You're not.
yourself. You're not being honest with
Yeah, and
yourself.
yourself as well too. And you're really not doing anyone favors. It's like you're enabling them. And again, every situation, it's not like you have to tell everybody the truth every time, but when you make that switch, it really is. It's amazing. But go ahead, Spoons. I'm sorry. Keep going.
oh no, I mean, that's great. I mean, that brings up another point is like I'm a chronic people pleaser and recognizing that in myself and kind of doing the research and kind of figuring out in those personality tests and different things why I kind of ended up on that path and then learning how to kind of switch it around. That was really hard with the people that you grow up with. It's not so hard to do it with the people with the newer people, but setting boundaries and stuff
Mm,
with established relationships is so hard.
mm,
But it's
mm.
worth doing. I mean, for
Yeah.
me, it was. I lost a lot in the process, and it's taken time, but we've kind of built things back, me and my family. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's definitely worth doing. And now I can see it easier when I kind of start to go down that path of doing something that's maybe not even for that person that I'm trying to please is best good. It's certainly not for my best good, and I'm able to recognize it more and say no to people easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting where all these things kind of spiral off, but yeah,
I had a
Yeah.
note that I was saying before about parents, and that this is exactly what I was talking about because we've talked at length about our own parents to each other. And
yeah,
I feel though when you could, and I know you understand this too, so that's why I want to talk about this. When you realize that you're not a victim in the situation, you can look at your parents as, hey, they're the ones that gave life to me. And you know what? They're really just trying to do their best. They grew up in a different time and they want me to have the best, even though they're doing it in the worst way possible. But I feel like that's where the true work comes. So people like us, we move away, we go away, and then eventually I feel like the true work is to come back and to interact with their family or parents or whoever it is that's close to you that triggers you. You find the people that trigger you, and then you work on it from there. It's very similar to being in a relationship. It's what I found. It's not what I thought it was going to be at all. I'm like, oh yeah, relationship. You're just going to meet someone and it's going to be great for the rest of your life. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying that it's
fine
not
and
great.
dandy.
Yeah. And I'm not saying
Like,
that it's not great. And it's actually exactly what I needed because now I get to see in real time if I do get triggered or whatever, because I'm living with another person and you're constantly with them. But I'm like, oh wait, how is this my issue? And it's really kind of supercharged my self-knowledge in work and all this stuff you call it. And I really, that's why I think I've been being quiet about a lot of things and just kind of saying, wait, I could be wrong here. But yeah, it's really interesting work. But to bring it back to what I was saying, those people who are closest to you, who you grew up with, feel like that's really where the work can be done. And I feel like I'm talking to myself right now. I'm looking at myself. Yes, Brandon, go talk to your family.
preaching to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what this show's all
Exactly.
about, y'all.
Yeah.
It's, it doesn't matter how much work you do, there's always something else to be looked at, something else that you can improve upon. But like Brandon is always saying, be easy on yourself. Or, I mean, I guess it even did come from Michelle. It's so funny to think how those messages kind of came down to me when in a time where I needed them. I needed somebody to say, it's okay. You can let go of some of the stuff and just figure it out a piece at a time.
Well, I was
It
saying
just,
before, I'm not sure if you're interrupted or if you were on or not, but I was just saying how we get so wrapped up in our ego and our identity with our roles. Like
mhm.
I mean, my role as a DJ, I don't think because I was older when I got into it, so I never really identified too much. And then I did comedy, so I was too cool to be just a DJ, whatever. But I see a lot in friends that I have, and especially ones that have been DJing younger ages. And it's same thing with like a doctor or a nurse or any of these.
It becomes who they are.
Yeah, because people crave this validation from exterior sources because the way that we're raised. And it really is a good way. I mean, I tell everybody I used to be in the Marine Corps, and when I first got out, it was more for that. It was more like, hey, look at me, give me some validation and attention or whatever. Now I tell people that because this is how I look. And when I show up, sometimes I want them to know that, oh, I'm a capable, don't worry. I'm like, I was a Marine. It's cool. But it's funny how that changes in your life too. But that really is. And I would see that when I was in the Marines too. I grew my hair out a little longer and I try to stand out because that's just how I am. But some people, it's their whole identity, even for their whole life. I was a Marine. It's all over their car. They still have really short hair. They dress that way. And again, there's nothing wrong with it, but it just, to them, it makes them feel like they're enough to other people. And it all comes back to this self healing because
Pleasing others.
What's that?
Pleasing others. Sorry.
Pleasing others. Yes. And we start off, I feel like, because of the trauma that we go through, it really is just like this abandonment that happens to us at one point or another. And then we feel like we have to please people in order to not get that abandonment. I mean, that's not what happens to everybody, but this is a common theme. And to work through that is really, I mean, it really is amazing. And like you said, it's not easy, but it has so many better benefits because I in my life anyway, the stress has gone down and the anxiety and all this stuff. I was looking at my thumbs the other day. Like I used to rub my thumbs and my fingers a lot when I would get anxious and my skin would like peel on the side. I'm sure you've seen that before. And I would bite my nails. And now my nails, I have to keep up with cutting them because they'll start growing and I don't even like, oh shit. But
Yeah.
it's just benefits like that, like little things like that. The anxiety goes away. And I feel like it happens on bigger levels too, or with bigger addictions and stuff that start to go away. So That's really, if you're somebody who's on the border with all this stuff and you're looking into it, that's what you can look forward to. The release of the anxiety, the letting go of things. But go ahead, Sharon.
Oh no, I if Spoons has anything to say. I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, well, I guess I could just speak to that about uh, the results of doing the spiritual work as well. Because, like, over the last few years, I've had some phobias that just sort of disappeared as I've done the work. And I'm like, I don't know what thing it was actually related to that I finally let go of, but
Wow.
it's fascinating. Like, I had a fear of heights.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty crippling, and it's to the point where I couldn't do certain hikes. And I was able to, now I can walk right up to the edge and I'm fine. It doesn't even register. And I'm like, I don't know what that was, but it's so amazing to have that relief and how it can just show up in little ways. Like I had a big thing about being on camera.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yes.
probably one of the reasons it's taken so long to actually come on the show and everything, because that was still something I was kind of working through. The last job that I had, actually, they started requiring us to be on camera for our conferences or whatever, whereas it hadn't been a requirement before that. And it turned into this big thing for me. And it kind of forced me to have to just go ahead and do it versus, I mean, I guess I could have just quit at that point, but I just kind of tried to adapt and kept trying to. So it helped me work through whatever that was, which is, of course, it's the mirror thing. You don't want to look at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Quite literally, I just didn't want to actually
Right.
look at myself.
Right. Oh my God. That's a really, wow. I didn't even
Yeah.
think of that.
Yeah, so it's just some more of that work. I can't say exactly what that's tied to, and I won't say that there's not like a little bit of anxiety or something going on camera, but I'm sitting here, I'm talking, I'm fine. For the
Yeah.
most part, a lot of things that used to cause me crippling anxiety, I'm like, why? Why was that even a thing? I don't understand at this point, but I can
Right.
sympathize with people that it's still a
Right.
thing for sure.
Because if you think about it, it'd be like them asking you to come in person, sort of, right? Because all they're doing is seeing your face. They just want to interact with you and see your face, right? But I mean, I get it too, because when I first started doing these shows with Brandon, I was very self-conscious constantly. Um, and it took a while for it to go away. I to kind of like come down.
Mhm.
Um, so, but it's like I didn't realize it's because you're looking at yourself and you never do that because you never see yourself. You're always talking to other people. So
Right.
interesting because like it makes me think of like this is actually kind of a benefit to technology that I had never considered because you're forced to look at you know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
forced
Right.
to look at yourself. And yeah, I know there's egotistical people out there who love looking at themselves.
All right, Sharon, you didn't have to say it. No, I'm just kidding. You didn't mean that.
But, for a lot of people who need to do that work, that inner work of being comfortable with themselves, um, it seems to be a tool for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like that thing that anybody could be a teacher or anything could be a teaching. And it's funny you
Mm-hmm.
said that, Sharon, because I was thinking that exact thing right before you said that about certain people who probably like to see themselves. And I thought about certain content creators that are out there, and that's probably they have the opposite of right. They're not worried about the anxiety. It's the flip. They're putting themselves on a pedestal instead of putting
Yeah.
themselves in the pit or whatever. Yeah, it's
And maybe they're people pleasers too. So like, they're trying to be funny. They're trying to, get as many likes as possible. They're trying to be on for as many hours as possible and get as much attention as possible because they're trying to validate themselves. Like, oh, I need the external validation because I'm not good enough for myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe we could talk about some of the methods that you used for self-healing because
Or that you currently
or you
use.
currently use because I know people
Yeah.
that's something that I was always asking about when I was getting to this stuff and people might be like, "Oh, this is great you're talking about all this, but how do we do it?" And again, I always in
Yeah.
you guys all agree, but everyone's different. You have to find your own way, but it's cool when people share their ways with it, their path.
Right. Because we could benefit from knowing another tip, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I really do believe it's kind of like how we talk about everybody has their own path, and you just have to figure out what thing works for you. And
Is this going back to the not your medicine topic?
yeah, maybe, because like there are things, as I've met people over the last few years, and I'm like, that's a very interesting way and to process your stuff. But I deep down feel for me, I know that's not my way, but I'm not anti anybody else's way really.
Right.
Um, for me, one of the biggest things where I had a big letting go or release of something was having sound therapy. So it was kind of interesting that whole situation, how it came about. I don't even remember exactly how it came up that I found out that you could have like singing bowls and different things used to help you let go or release things.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, how fascinating. And me being drawn to music, of
Yeah.
course, I would love to try to use that kind of method. So my acupuncturist just randomly had somebody appear that week that I was thinking about it that did that method. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. I'll make an appointment. So I made, I don't know, 4 or 5 appointments with him. I was going like every week or every other week, something like that.
I remember.
Had a huge process,
Mhm.
huge release with him. And then it just got to that point where I was like, okay, I think maybe I'm done with it. And then he picked up and moved to someplace else. I think Kentucky maybe, but he had
And
literally moved there
that's amazing. Like
and
it was like
started that.
you needed that little space that he was there. That
Yeah.
was the time you needed. And then he left.
Yeah.
Like a
That's crazy.
dandelion.
Exactly. Exactly. If you
He's
think
your
the universe
dandelion.
doesn't blow things towards you in the time frame that you need and make it available, you're crazy.
And a quick side note, maybe that's what everything that happens to us is what we need. So when things happen to us that we don't like and we get upset and frustrated, it's just like a dandelion appearing on someone's lawn who's like anal about their lawn and they get mad about it. It's
I'm
just,
a your dandelion. Like I'm a your huckleberry.
that's right. I'll be your dandelion.
Exactly. So I thought that was the most fascinating one. Literally somebody moving to the area and only staying 2 months, which was exactly how long I needed to do that process. And that was just, it was a one-on-one process where they use singing bowls and they would actually lay them on parts of your body and let the vibrations really get into you.
Wow.
And it allowed me to release things that I don't even understand what they were. And then, of course, I had the after effect which was not very pleasant, where I had all of this relief and I didn't know what to do with that feeling. I was used to being weighted down. And it's like,
Being
I've
free
always
from
kind
it.
of, yeah, I've always kind of described it as you're in a cave for such a long time and then you come out and the light is so blinding. And a big piece of you just wants to run back into the cave and go back to what you knew, but you can't do that.
You can't unsee it.
Once you know there's a world beyond that cave, there ain't no going back, baby.
Yeah.
Plato's cave.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to learn how to cope with it and how to adjust. And, I've had other things like that happen on the journey since then, but you have people in place that you can talk to. You have, I think that's really the biggest one is just having people that understand.
Mhm.
hey, I'm having a moment. I need somebody to listen,
Yeah.
even though I don't even know why I'm upset.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that was probably the biggest one. I don't know. I've got into tuning forks. I think those are great for smaller releases and things like that. I've worked with practitioners. I have my own set. Um, I think they're a great tool. What are
What
some of the
about
other?
what about human design?
Yes, human design was a big one. So, okay, with me being a chronic people pleaser, but also I was always really indecisive, and I still have some of that, of course. Personality tests were very hard for me because you have to answer these questions, and it's like, well, I don't know.
I
I could
know.
just be
I
really
get it.
indecisive about it. So,
Me too.
it was very difficult to try to get a personality type or do any of those types of tests because that's hard. And then I came across human design. It was actually on Bootsy Greenwood's channel. He had a lady on talking about that. And I was like, oh, you can actually just put in your birth date and time information in place, and it tells you what your personality, all these things about you. And it was so
Yeah.
fascinating. And, I've done some of those for different people, and everybody's like, okay, I actually understand this. This makes a lot of sense. But
Yeah.
that was a big one for me. It was a good way to dive into different parts of my personality and figure out, why do I do things this way? Why am I drawn to do it this way when everybody else is drawn to do it some other way?
Hmm.
And but I guess the thing that's interesting about my human design is I'm actually a middle path. Most people are a left path or a
Oh,
right path.
wow.
I'm actually a juxtaposition.
That's really cool.
Hmm.
So,
I can't remember what I am because I don't even I know you did it for me on a
mhm,
paper, but I need to go reference that again.
yeah. But I mean that, whether you use a personality test, whether you use whatever method works for a person, there's so many different ways you can take apart yourself and be kind and figure out how can I use this information and make things go easier for everyone. So
I
it's
think that's
Yeah.
interesting.
the right way to use it. A lot of people don't use it that way, but it does bring me back to being easy on myself because when I learned my personality type and then when you shared that information, you also shared that with us too about the personality design and whatever that we've looked into that would tell me more about how my personality works and all this stuff. What it's done is just it's like released all this anxiety, like you were saying about how you are and how it's different than other people. And sometimes because of that, we're always taught to fit in with the crowd. So we get this anxiety, we don't even know where it comes from. And then once we learn that, oh, this is the way that I prefer to do it, and this is why I do it this way, it's okay. And again, that doesn't mean that now you have a license to do everything your way because this is how I'm made and too bad for you, right? You guys understand that too. I know that, but it did it just it lifted this giant weight off my shoulders. I'm like, oh, okay, it's all right that I do all these things. This is just how I'm set up.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts about any other thoughts?
Well, we did talk a little bit about the food being your medicine, but maybe we could talk about that a little more because I love that concept. I try to joke around. I'm thinking of a premise where it's like I got it backwards and I was letting my medicine be my food. So I just ate aspirin all day and I lost all this weight. It was great. It's the aspirin diet.
Oh my God.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I kind of agree with what you said earlier about is what we think about what we're putting into our body, even more so than what we actually put into our body. I think it's important, you want to try to do
Your
good
best.
things for yourself, but I think also it's about balance. So it's okay to cheat or
Yeah.
do something that, maybe is a little different. Variety, I think, is called for in all aspects.
I think also, could it be that the more healed you are spiritually, the more spiritually evolved, and this is not to say that, to put other people down, but like the more you recognize all the things that have um, put you in a place where you're, uh, or shall I say, the more you heal all those old traumas, um, the more light you are. So the food, whatever you eat, doesn't affect you as much as it would when you were lying to yourself, people pleasing, you know, doing things that really aren't for your best and for your highest. Like, and now I'm not just talking about like food, but like just the being inauthentic. Um, could it be that when you are more authentic, and the more authentic you are, all it's like all you become more light, like you're become more like a light being, and then the stuff like, and then you probably don't even need to eat as much either.
Right.
And who knows?
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
mean, I just
speculating.
feel like, when you going off of what you just said, being more authentic to yourself, I mean, we're designed to be different from one another. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so when we can release that fear and be our true selves with people, I think who knows what all benefits come from that. Ideas get shared and things get built, and you know, it's unlimited, the potential to being authentic versus trying to blend in. I mean, I don't know how many years of my life I tried to just blend in, and I was really bad at it. So, it was a relief to me to get to kind of stop doing that and just, okay, I'm still quirky and all of that stuff, and people accept it or they don't, and that's whatever. I don't attach myself to that as much. I won't say that I don't still get bothered by some of those types of things, like not being accepted or whatever, but for the most part, it's not, if you're not attached to it, it
Right.
doesn't really make a difference,
It's
you know.
going back to what David R. Hawkins said. It's not your norm. It's like, yeah, of course certain things are gonna hurt, like losing someone in your life that's very close to you and they pass away. Of course you're gonna feel that loss. You know, you're human. You're living in this realm. Um, but it's not your norm, and that's the point. That's the middle path, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because like 2019, 2020, right around there, my dad had a bout of cancer. And that's what caused me to move back to Alabama, and kind of I moved back into a duplex with my family, and because I felt like they needed me, and that people pleaser part of me wanted to be of service and be available to them more so than what I was an hour away. And it went okay for a while, but it's difficult living with family and figuring out where the boundaries really are with things. And what I found was, their idea of how I could live in that environment, even though it was my property at that time. Um, they were they were still trying to treat me like I was a child, and they had the rule over me. So it was a really interesting experience. And then, not long even after I moved in, my dad's cancer uh, was gone. So
Oh,
then we were just together for like, I think I stayed 4 years. 3 or 4 years. And, I've gotten back out on my own. I've gotten reestablished. And a couple of weeks ago, he actually had a procedure and they found more tumors, which the type of cancer he has is a very slow growing cancer. It doesn't spread to other places. They're able to get it each time. So, he just has a little bit of a recovery time from just how he feels, having to have procedures and things done. So there's not that urge when it comes back this time for that I have to go home. I have to give up my whole life that I've built and move back in with them again. I can still offer them assistance and help and even go stay with them if I need to for a week or two. But I don't, working on myself, I've realized that I don't have to put myself in that situation again. I can still help and not give up everything to do that.
You've put a boundary up for yourself where you can still care for yourself first.
Yeah. And it's not even that they asked me to do that previously.
Right.
It's just what I felt like I needed to do. Right. And they felt like they were offering me some sort of help by putting property in my name and certain things. But yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But it's interesting to see how it comes back around and how the feelings are totally different. So on both sides.
Yeah, it's a very interesting cycle. I've noticed it how some people express an illness or they'll get an illness when it seems like they need attention or something, and it's not even saying it's a conscious thing or whatever, but it's another reminder to be very conscious of your thoughts and and your I was going to say activities and your actions, because it could lead to illness, right? Very easily.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that whole the quote, that Hippocrates quote that you shared reminds me of this author in this book I read some years ago, but I think it's Ellis Miller, The Body Never Lies, or the body, something like that. And it's like the body keeps record, right, of your past traumas, the things that you haven't let go of, and the things that you're attached to, and pain and whatnot that may have happened that you haven't let go, and it manifests as an illness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it can go away. It can, if you can address that.
I think so. I think a lot of things are that you can recover from, even if medical maybe says different. I think there's paths out there that you can try. But I am of an acceptance that maybe some things go too far. Kind of like what one of the quotes said is like, if you let it go on for such a long time, there is a point of no return.
Yeah. And you will need some sort of like medical attention at that point, because otherwise it's pretty much impossible to reverse at that point.
Yeah.
With that, like if you decide you want to reverse it versus, just saying, you know what, take me now. Like,
I'm ready.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that reminds me of it's because we rewatched Breaking Bad again recently, and something I didn't notice the first time I watched it was Walter, the guy who was making meth. Once he started making meth, and he did the treatment too for his cancer, but his cancer went into remission and it was fine. And then when he stopped making meth and he tried to have like a normal kind of life, not really, but normal, it started to come back. It's so crazy how, in the way I interpreted it, was that he just wasn't expressing himself, because he's like a school teacher and whatever. We don't talk about Breaking Bad all day, but it's funny how art imitates life in that way. And I don't even know if that guy, Vince Gilligan, whatever that created it, was planning on that, or that's just the way he wrote the story. But I feel like that's what happens. Some people, they get this diagnosis of cancer and it wakes them up. It changes their life. They change their whole lifestyle. They start to go do things. They start to go do comedy or things they've always wanted to do. And to bring up another TV show, it reminds you of Rick and Morty. There's this game in that show. It's a video game they play, and it puts you. It's like a simulation theory thing where you play this game and it puts you in someone's life and you live their whole life out. And to you, it seems like a life or whatever. So when Morty played it after he got done, he's like, "Man, you got cancer and still went back to work after." He's like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" You know. So that's it, it's like we said before with the daffod or the dandelions. It's just the universe or whatever God telling you things. It's like, all right, if you really don't want to live and be here, your body's going to take you out. All these tumors start to grow, and then if you start to show God or the universe or whatever that you do want to be here, then I think it goes away. And then, like Sharon said, maybe kind of she said, but it's like your time to go. Maybe it is your time to go.
Well, if you decide, right, you can.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't decide, and it's still your time to go.
I actually have kind of a weird story about deciding. So back when I was still in patient care, and we would do those heart caths like routinely. It's a very routine procedure, and while it is very invasive, the likelihood that you're going to die while we have you on the table is very low. Like I could think I did that for 5 years, and I think in the time I was there, like in the procedure room, we had 3 people pass away. So it's very low odds. And you do, say, 20 procedures a day, 5 days a week, not counting what you do on the weekends. Anyway, so it's very good odds that you're going to be just fine. But we had this patient we went and got, and we were talking to him as we are pushing him to the procedure room. And he's like, I know I'm going to die. And I'm like, you're fine. He didn't have anything wrong with his arteries. He had, when we got in there and we're looking, everything's fine. We're getting ready to just close things up and be done. And he died on the table. And it's just like he had his mind made up. He was done.
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing I think I ever saw.
Wow. Yeah. There you go. Like the will to just be like done. He had that will
to be correct. To be right. I mean, he was right. He was going to die. And we were like, no, you're not. You're fine.
Well, that's another problem with the hospital. Is the hospital is there to, it's supposed to, well, you're supposed to be there to get better. So if you're not getting better or you die, it's like you're a failure.
Yeah.
So it's another whole, it's like a bad place to die because of that, I think.
When like dying really isn't a failure, it's just like it should be like a graduation,
Right. It's just the next phase,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the best part is you get to choose that for yourself.
Right.
That's another thing about all this spirituality stuff. It to other people, it seems that you might be callous or uncaring, but it's just like, no, like when somebody dies, I don't always, like Sharon and I've talked about this a bunch. It doesn't really affect me in the same way that affects a lot of people. I'm sure you guys understand that as well. But some people might like think you're callous or whatever, or, you have issues, but it's like, no, I see the bigger picture. Like I don't see, to you, sir, you think you're never going to see this person again and he's done. That's it. But to me, it's like, there's no way he could be done. It doesn't make any sense. It goes against everything I've ever experienced in my life, that when you're dead, that's it. It's just over. It doesn't, so I just don't get I guess it's just the attachment. I'm working on another premise where, because I used to have this idea where I was kind of like a psychopath, but I'm a good psychopath. But I've been watching Dexter.
I remember that phase.
Yeah. And I've been watching Dexter and he's a good psychopath, but I'm like, I'm a neutral psychopath. Like I don't kill people for bad reasons or I don't kill them for good reasons, but I'll kill them for like utility reasons. Like if you want to plug Uncle Joe or whatever, no one is around, like no one can do it, and you want someone, I'm your guy, I'll come and plug them. I'm a neutral psychopath. Like I kill for like
Dr. Kevorkian.
Yeah, I kill for like utilitarian reasons, like I forgot how.
If somebody asks you to.
Yeah, it's like, I don't, but I feel like that's part of it too, where well, I guess everyone maybe is different, but as I started to grow and my worldview started to grow, I saw that it's like there's no reason to be sad. Yeah, it could be tragic because of circumstances, especially if somebody has children that they left behind. That's really sad and they're young. But if you look at it from another point of view, that child now just has different challenges to overcome, and they have a different set of circumstances. And it's not up to me to decide those child circumstances. I can't even find my hard drive with all the episodes of oversharing that she's been harassing me about for like a year. Guys, Sharon is amazing. Just so you know, her level of patience with me is just. I just gotta let you know, Sharon, I love you.
Starting to get to me though.
I know. I found that. Yeah, trust me. Yesterday I was going crazy. But we'll get that situation fixed. But yeah, what I realized though is like you want these people not to die, or sometimes you want somebody to die. You're like, I hate this person, but it's not up to us to decide what happens. We just gotta roll with the punches and go with it. There is some grand master plan at work that we're not aware of, and I feel like the sooner you can accept that and you just go with what happens, the better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Spoons if she's had any like recent revelations about this like self-healing work and that she wants to talk about.
Well, I guess I didn't talk about last year. I actually did something a little radical for me, which was I quit my job. I've always like worked for companies. I've, had like a pretty consistent work history all my life. If I've if I've decided that I'm done with a job, I've always had another thing lined up, and I didn't this last time. it was one of those things. It was like life is short, and I was in this place where they were paying me really good money and I was able to work from home and there were a lot of great benefits to it, but they were making me completely miserable because they were micromanaging me. So, I realized I was being difficult.
There's your dandelion.
Yeah, difficult at certain points, like going back to being on video camera. Well, I started being on video camera for all of those meetings that they were requesting. Fine, whatever. You want to stare at me? Stare at me. I'm not going to look. And so then they had a problem with that because I wouldn't look and stare into the camera. And I'm like, that's a little too micromanaging for me, and
that's creepy.
Yeah.
I could see why they're doing it. They're trying to, but some things you can't force, they try to force these connections among people who are working. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean,
look at the camera. It's like it puts lotion on the skin. You know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck are we doing here now?
It's like, that's not how my listening technique works. Some people, yes, they can sit and stare you in the face and have that listening capability. But typically I need to be like, doodling or I don't know, something, messing with something.
I have to be playing solitaire if I'm bored. Absolutely. Like I'm just listening to something, I will be playing solitaire because I have to be doing something.
Yeah, I'm still active.
And maybe I'm attached to that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But they just found that disrespectful or whatever. And there was like 100 other things that I could go into where they were being extremely micromanaging. And I just hit the point. And what happened was we had a coworker that died in a car crash, her and her 7-year-old. Just randomly were on the road one day and got in this accident and the car basically exploded, killing them instantly. And, I sat there for about a week or two thinking about that. And I'm like, you know what? Life is very short. And so I'm just going to go. I don't have a plan. I know I have some money saved and I've got a retirement plan. If things get really bad, I can get into that. So it's not like I don't have things set up for me to do this. But I just quit. And then the first day that I had on my own, that I didn't know what to do, I just signed up to do rideshare and signed up with Uber and started driving. And that's what I've been doing since December. And you were asking me how I've learned to work on myself. Well, rideshare is my new relationship. This is my very short-term relationships with people where they do things or we have certain types of interactions and they bring up some kind of feeling and I feel some type of way, and then I can think about that and see what can I find in me to make
what
those
comes up.
Yeah.
I love it.
So these are my relationships, situationships, whatever you want to look at it as. But you can find so many ways to do work on yourself and just ask yourself the question, where did that come from? Why does that matter? Why did that bother you? Why is the person in the back chewing gum loudly? And that's never bothered me a day in my life, but suddenly I feel like I want to just die listening to them chew gum.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I can imagine. I really can.
But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it. It's taken me a while to kind of build up the hours that I'm able to do it. Being an introvert and being at work from home, I was so kind of shut down on that interaction stuff. And so it's helped quite a bit with that. I mean, I'm always going to be awkward and quirky. That's just my personality type. But, it can be fun a lot of days. Like right before we recorded, I had to send you a message and I'm like, I just booked a ride that's almost 2 hours long. And the guy was lovely. We had great conversation all the way. And, I told him about my background as a nurse and all of the stuff. And then we got to talking about COVID and, that certain thing that people were doing.
The coronal mass injection.
Yes. Yeah. Coronal mass injection.
I was going to be all for that. And I was like, no, I'm for people being able to make their decision about what they feel about that. If they want it, great. Okay. If they don't want it, great.
Absolutely.
It was
no polarization
really fun,
about it.
Yeah, it was a really fun conversation because that was another reason I was so thankful to find you all, because I come from a medical community. How many people do you think I had in my life that I could have that conversation with? That, I just want to be able to make my own choice as to what I want to do with myself.
That's okay when you're talking about a baby, but it's not okay when you're talking about a coronal mass injection.
Right. So it's just funny how it all works out.
It is very interesting. So as far as other personality type stuff, you're on INFP, right?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Well, I mean, I was taking all those tests and not having much luck figuring out. I was getting all kinds of results with that particular one. And our friend Heather at the time, she was really good with those tests. And we sat and had a lot of conversations. And so she kind of helped me discover, okay, we're pretty sure you're INFP. And then, okay. Of course, our friend Joe, he came back and we've had lots of questionnaires and conversations back and forth. And he thought for a while I might be something else. Maybe I'll leave that for a discussion on another day. But I think he agrees at this point that I'm the INFP. So, yeah. It's interesting. We kind of dance to our own little tune and are a little indecisive and trying to always do the people pleasing thing. It's interesting to see how at the base of that, it's just, I don't know, it's so fun. But I
I
can also see where along the way, as I went down the path, that I wasn't that necessarily showing up as that personality type.
mm,
When I got to the lower places uh, where I was trying to separate myself from that nursing role, particularly at that point, I became somebody that I didn't really recognize. I was no fun. I was very black and white on things. I wanted to go by the rules, and I was just really miserable. But I think it's kind of a conversation we were having the other day. It's about finding that middle between whatever the opposite type of an INFP would be for me. I'm sure that's where that black and white rule loving person came from, trying to adapt to a working world that an INFP can't necessarily survive in, because we want to be adaptable and on our own schedule and plan. So I
indeed.
don't know.
Um, Tell us a little bit about when you first realized you were INFP and you were looking at C.S. Joseph's videos, because I know that that's a fun topic.
Yeah, I think that for a while I they were hard to listen to, man, for because he hates INFP so much. But I mean, he has some great points. He's very much a kick in the pants kind of attitude towards them. There's like, you have all this great things that you can do, but you won't do any of them because our one of our detriments is sloth. So we just don't have the motivation, or we have to have a lot of time to recover, however you want to look at that. So we don't get a lot of things accomplished if we don't have kind of a driving force making us do that. So he's very harsh on INFPs. I don't know if it's rightly so or not, but they're hard to listen to. He does make some good points. I think he had one particular one, because an INFP has this thing about daydreaming and working out all the problems through daydreams and just making stories. And we've talked about that, not writing the story, letting things play out. But INFPs gonna want to write the story. And my thing is I wanted to write how every character was gonna do, and like I wouldn't even have certain interactions with people because I already played all that out in my dream world. And so I know how it's gonna happen, right? Because I know it all. But it was just like this control freak thing. And I never thought of it that way until he harshly put it that way. You're just being a control freak by choosing to live in a dream world instead of having real
Participating.
conversations in reality. So it's harsh
Well,
words, but it's
yeah.
true.
I just looked up your shadow type, and the shadow type for INFP is an ENFJ. I don't really
Okay.
know what ENFJs are like. I don't think we know any.
I can't think of any right off.
Yeah.
So I'll have to look at that. But yeah, I bet they like rules.
We shall see. That'll be an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, maybe we can ask Joe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Joel might know for sure.
He's
He
probably putting it in
definitely.
the chat right now.
Yeah. He's probably got
True,
it
true.
all figured out.
Or
Yeah.
commenting if you missed it.
Yes.
Shout out to Joe.
Yeah. Shout
Absolutely.
out to Joe. Well, speaking of Joe, we've been having some interesting conversations about personality types and personality, and yeah, we'll probably be doing a show with him, and hopefully Spoons, we can all get the four of them together, the four of us together, and do like a sort of little panel and talk about some fun stuff. Yeah, about
Absolutely.
yeah, about this topic.
Or self knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. The stuff you're saying about INFP. It's because I'm an INTP. So it's so close, but that T and the F, the difference is
Mhm.
it's like a mirror. And it's interesting because Elizabeth is allegedly an INTP.
As
But
well.
yeah, uh, and I've, when you're describing about the dream world and stuff, because us INTPs, we also have the dream world as well. But
Right.
I think it's more about not
A
interactions with
thinking, a
people. It's more
thinking
about
dream
like,
world.
yeah, it's more about like the physical, like what I think's going to happen and, planning out for that. But when you describe it and what you're saying, it really does resonate with me in that way. And it makes sense. And I'm just trying to think about what my fantasizing could stop me from doing. Because, there's that whole occult saying or whatever. Maybe it's not even a cult, but they're like, you shouldn't talk about plans or ideas that you have. You just do them, because when you talk about them, you kind of let out some of that energy. I wonder if
And
it's
I,
the same thing about the dream world. If you just constantly dream about it, maybe you also,
yeah, like you said, Spoons, you were like, it was like I'd already done it. So like,
why bother? Yeah.
yeah,
No.
yeah,
Why give somebody the chance to
make it
answer the
different.
question that I have, or have whatever interaction? Because I'm like, no, I already know how they would respond very egotistically. But it makes for good story writers, I suppose, which I enjoy doing that too. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. That's what it is. All these tendencies we have, they could be weaknesses or strengths. Just
And you
depends on
could
how we use them.
use them as your outlet too, Spoons.
absolutely.
You can write it.
Yeah.
So you can use that to write novels or stories, short stories, and then you've used it for a good purpose. Not that doing what you other did the other way you did it was bad, just that it's counterproductive to
Right.
your growth, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I
I
think
like that.
writing is an excellent way to kind of work out some different things.
Mhm.
Sometimes you kind of know what you're going to put on the page, and then sometimes things come out that you weren't even expecting. Um, yeah, I did a lot of writing in the healing process too, and very, I don't know. I guess there's 1,000 ways you can do these processes. It's so
Yeah,
fascinating to me.
and it's unique per person, right? Like for
Mhm.
you, it just naturally flowed to write, to blog. Speaking of which, if you don't mind, we can share your blog when
Sure,
we release this. Positive
sure.
glows.
Yeah, I haven't put anything up in quite a while, but
Yeah, I
I
figured.
have the intention to start back.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I did
something
like
else
reading
to,
your stories. Like
yeah,
whenever you would write, I really enjoyed reading.
yeah. I just, because I wasn't doing the interaction stuff with people, I had a whole lot less stories to write other than like the personal stuff as I was processing it. So I kind of feel like, this is another thing that rideshare is giving me. It's giving me all sorts of different characters to kind of incorporate into whatever I
Yeah,
write. So,
yeah,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
true. Hilarious.
So, well, I feel like we've been going about an hour and 45 approximately,
Yeah, around there.
maybe a little more. Yeah, probably a little more, more like maybe 10 minutes from the second hour, right? Something like
Yeah, it's
that.
something about that because we're almost at 4 o'clock here. Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
this might be a good stopping point. We can always have spoons. I mean, we plan to have her back on with Joe, but anytime you want to come on, there's so many things that we can talk about. So, you're welcome anytime. Definitely, as long as you can
absolutely.
wrangle Sharon and I together, we'll do it. Yeah,
Thank
and
you for
thank you so
having
much.
me.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome, and thank you for coming
Yeah.
on and sharing all your experiences and overcoming your fear of being on a podcast. And that's one thing I was going to say earlier too. The spiritual work does help with this stuff, but then also doing it. And Sharon can attest to that too. And that's something I said to her in the beginning. I'm like, you just keep doing it and doing it, and after a while, you get good at it. And that really goes with anything in life, I think. But yeah, so maybe who knows? Maybe podcasting will be in Spoons' future. You never know, or something video.
Van vlogging. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
who knows, right?
You never know where it's going to take us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially with that medical stuff because there's so much knowledge that you have, and it doesn't even have to be counter mainstream. You know, it could just be like, oh, ask an RN or whatever. Is this what's going on here? Do you think you really need to go to a doctor? Maybe this first or whatever. You know, stuff like that. But who knows?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I've even thought about going to people's doctor's appointments with them after having a conversation with them to see what their goals are and
Oh,
knowing what questions to ask their doctor.
right.
Let their doctor do the advising. That's fine. But let me help them come up with the questions to get them to
Right.
the goals and see if they're realistic or not.
Kind of like a medical advocate or something, just
Hmm.
to ensure that, like you said, the right questions get asked.
Yeah, I'm sure, I'm getting to do it for friends and family in different ways. So maybe that's all it's supposed to be, but I could see the potential for it being something else. So
Yeah.
just with new eyes, not working for a
Yeah.
corporation, I'm learning how to navigate those waters. So
Yeah.
Nice.
I like it. It's like I don't know, it makes me think of like if more people did it too and you worked with other people who did that as well that were on a similar mindset.
yeah,
Um it's kind of like rideshare, you know? It's like,
right.
someone who can come with you to your appointment and help you ask the right questions because they know the other side too, so they know how they can help you. Um, because if you go there maybe blind and the doctor really just does, sometimes they don't have a lot of time. So
Right.
you want to maximize that and ask the right questions, right? Like when you can and maximize that.
And the
Absolutely.
doctors would probably appreciate that too, as long as, you're not like in there just like, this is all lie. That's probably why I'd be bad at that job, but you'd be great at it. No, I'm just, it's kind of like a lawyer, right? You take a lawyer with you when anytime you
Or
do
like an
anything legal.
advocate, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. I
It's
love it.
just,
Yeah.
I like the idea too.
Well, you never
It's
know.
Yeah.
yeah.
You never know.
Well, I
You
don't
want to
know.
shout the chat out?
Yeah, that's right. There you go. See you, Sharon. That's fine. What's up, chat? Shout out to the chat. Thank you guys for hanging out all the way to the end. We love you guys so much. It's the best way to support us is to just come here every Thursday when we premiere or go live. Today we're premiering, but either way, we're in the chat hanging out with you guys. So, and I find that when we premiere, we're actually in the chat more than when we go live. So look for us to be hanging out. And let's see, the website you can get more Oversharing stuff at is morelawsmoreproblems.com. Click on the Oversharing tab for all your Oversharing needs. There's ways to support us there financially. But as we always say, the best way to support us, like I said, is just hang out here, subscribe, share us around, comment, let us know what you think. If you have any ideas or questions, let us know. Oh, that's funny. She dropped out right at
Interesting.
the end.
Drop right.
Maybe she'll come back to say bye.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the best ways really to support us because, like we said, we're just ranting to ourselves. We're just working on ourselves through the show. And if you guys can get benefit from it, that's freaking great. We love it. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
comment. Let us know what you're thinking. And what else? I think that's it.
I really thought it was funny that like for a while she kept dropping out every like 5 minutes or so. And then she moved and she hadn't dropped out. Well, she just said that she said thanks guys. She just sent
Oh,
me a
okay.
message. So
All right.
she's out.
Howdy. But
Howdy.
right at the end, yeah,
So
she lasted all the
yeah,
way to the end.
yeah. So that's cool.
It's pretty
It's all
synchronistic.
good. Yeah.
Awesome. What a great episode. I'm
So
so excited. So good to have a guest on again. It's been a while.
yeah, it's been a while.
Cool. All right, everybody. We'll look for more exciting Oversharing episodes every Thursday. Check us out and make sure you hit that bell if you subscribe. This way you know exactly when it's coming out. Um, well, what do we say to good people, Sharon?
That once you start over Sharon,
Then you totally stop being a Karen.
That is right.
And remember, everybody, we're not trying to tell you how to live.
Just how to live along the middle path a little more, perhaps.
Exactly. Stay in the middle, everybody. Stay
Yeah.
balanced. Until next week, take care. Have a good weekend. Bye. Ciao, ciao.